She demanded I turn down my dream promotion to stay in her comfort zone. I had one of those moments last week that changes everything. You know the kind, where someone you love shows you exactly who they are, and you realize you've been making excuses for what you didn't want to see. The conversation that broke us up lasted maybe 15 minutes, but I've been replaying it for days trying to figure out when things actually went wrong. Was it when she said, "Absolutely not," before I even finished explaining the opportunity? Was it when she assumed I'd just dropped 2 years of work toward this goal? Or was it earlier, in all those times she nodded along when I talked about my career plans without actually hearing what I was saying? I've been dating Delaney for 3 years. She's brilliant, art gallery curator, comes from old Connecticut money, knows more about culture and history than anyone I've ever met. I'm from small-town Ohio, worked my ass off to get where I am as a senior financial analyst at a venture capital firm. Different backgrounds, but I thought we balanced each other out. 2 weeks ago, my mentor Victor offered me the promotion I've been grinding toward since I started there. Senior analyst position, significant pay bump, equity stake, the works. Only catch, it's at our Silicon Valley office. I'd been preparing for this possibility for months, even mentioned it to Delaney several times over the past year. When I told her about the offer, I was expecting maybe some mixed feelings, maybe concerns about logistics, but ultimately excitement for what this meant for my career. Instead, she looked at me like I'd suggested we move to Mars. "Absolutely not," she said before I could even finish explaining the details. "I can't just drop everything and start over somewhere else. My career is here, my connections are here, my whole life is here." I tried explaining how this wasn't just any job. This was the opportunity I'd been working toward, the kind of chance that doesn't come around twice in this industry. "There will be other opportunities," she said. "But you can't expect me to sacrifice everything I've built just so you can chase some Silicon Valley fantasy." Chase some fantasy. That's how she saw 2 years of strategic career moves and careful relationship building. "I'd never force you to move," I told her, "but I can't ask them to hold this position while we figure it out." She smiled and hugged me, relief flooding her face. "I knew you'd be reasonable about this. We can start looking at bigger apartments this weekend. Maybe something in Soho now that you'll have that salary bump." That's when I realized she hadn't heard what I actually said. She'd heard what she wanted to hear. I didn't correct her assumption. Instead, I called Victor the next morning and accepted the position with a start date 3 weeks out. Then I called Tony, my buddy who runs a moving company, and scheduled the crew for next Thursday. Here's what I've learned about myself in the past 3 years. I grew up watching my parents settle for good enough their entire lives. Safe jobs, predictable income, never taking risks that might lead somewhere better. I promised myself I'd never let fear, mine or anyone else's, keep me from opportunities I'd earned. Delaney thinks I'm being selfish. Maybe I am. But I've been in relationships where I was the one making all the compromises, and I know how that story ends. The moving truck arrives in 6 days. I still haven't told her. Update 1. Well, the secret's out, and it didn't go anything like I thought it would. Yesterday was supposed to be moving day. I'd planned to tell Delaney that morning before Tony's crew arrived, give us time to talk through everything properly. But she came home from the gallery around noon, 3 hours earlier than usual. She walked into our apartment to find 3 guys in work shirts carrying my desk toward the door. The look on her face, pure shock, like she was witnessing a break-in in progress. She looked at me, then at Tony, then back at me. "What is this?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "The crew I hired to move my stuff to California," I said. "I tried to tell you last week, but you weren't really listening." That's when the shock turned to something else. Anger, betrayal, disbelief, all of it hitting at once. "You're actually doing this? You're actually choosing some job over us?" I tried explaining again how this wasn't just some job, how this was literally the career move I'd been working toward for 2 years, the one we'd discussed multiple times. But she wasn't hearing it. "I already told Margaret you were staying," she said, tears starting. "She's counting on you to help organize the Morrison retrospective. I promised her we could host the opening reception." She'd already told her boss I was staying, made commitments involving my time in our apartment without even asking me. That's when I realized how completely different our understanding of that conversation had been. She didn't just assume I'd stay. She'd already started building plans around that assumption. Tony, bless him, just kept directing his crew around our argument like this was the most normal thing in the world. Probably wasn't his first breakup-in-progress moving job. About an hour into this mess, Riley showed up. Delaney's best friend, someone I'd always gotten along with, someone I figured would automatically take Delaney's side in whatever story she'd been telling. But when she walked into the chaos, boxes everywhere, Delaney crying, me trying to explain why I hadn't given her a formal ultimatum about the move, Riley's reaction surprised me. She listened to Delaney's version for about 10 minutes, then turned to me and said, "Wait, you've been talking about this promotion possibility for months, right? I remember you mentioning it at dinner last spring." Delaney shot her a look that could have cut glass. "Riley, that's not the point. The point is he's abandoning everything we built together for some corporate ladder-climbing obsession." Riley was quiet for a long moment, then asked a question that stopped everyone cold. "Delaney, when's the last time you supported one of Noah's career goals instead of asking him to modify it around your preferences?" The silence that followed was uncomfortable as hell. Here's what I realized watching that exchange. Even Delaney's closest friend could see the pattern I'd been trying to ignore. The way every discussion about my career somehow became about how it would affect her comfort level. The way my ambitions always seemed to require approval from someone who'd never shown genuine excitement about my professional growth. Tony finished loading the truck around 4 p.m. I packed a suitcase with essentials and told Delaney I'd be back for the rest of my stuff once I got settled. As I was leaving, she said something that's been stuck in my head since. "You'll realize this was a mistake when you're alone in some sterile California apartment with nobody who actually knows you." Maybe she's right. Maybe I'm trading something real for something shiny and uncertain, but I keep thinking about what Riley asked, and I can't remember the last time Delaney was genuinely excited about something that would advance my career rather than enhance her social life. I start Monday, still processing what the hell just happened. Edit. For those asking about the relationship status, I honestly don't know. We didn't officially break up, but I also didn't promise to come back. It feels like we're in some kind of limbo that'll probably resolve itself over the next few weeks. Edit 2. Tony's been moving people for 15 years. During the drive to storage, he told me this was actually one of the calmer breakup moves he's handled. Apparently people throw things more often than you'd think. Update 2. I thought the worst part of this whole situation was behind me after the moving truck left. I was wrong. Sunday afternoon, 2 days after I'd settled into a temporary place in Palo Alto, Delaney showed up at my door. Not the apartment we'd shared. She'd somehow found out where I was staying through mutual friends. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, hair disheveled, eyes red, wearing the same clothes I'd seen her in yesterday when she'd tried calling me 6 times. "We need to talk," she said, pushing past me into the living room. "This whole thing is ridiculous. You're being dramatic about a simple disagreement." A simple disagreement. That's what 3 years of dismissing my career goals had become in her mind. Riley arrived about 20 minutes later. Apparently Delaney had asked her to come as backup, thinking having her best friend there would help convince me to be reasonable. But something had shifted in Riley since the moving day argument. She seemed uncomfortable, kept glancing at Delaney like she was seeing someone she didn't recognize. The conversation started normal enough. Delaney trying to explain how we could make long-distance work, how I was overreacting to her concerns about the move, how she just needed time to adjust to the idea. Then Victor called. He was calling with news about the signing bonus, an extra $25,000 for accepting quickly and helping them avoid a longer search process. Professional conversation, exactly the kind of career development Delaney had spent 3 years treating like an interruption. When I hung up and explained what that call was about, something in Delaney's face changed, cold, almost disgusted. "Of course," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "More money, more status, more validation for your little small-town boy makes good fantasy." Riley looked shocked. "Delaney, what are you saying?" But Delaney was just getting started. "You don't understand what you're throwing away," she said to me, her voice getting louder. "I come from a world you could never access on your own. I've been elevating you for 3 years, introducing you to culture, teaching you how to present yourself in sophisticated company. And you're choosing to go back to that Midwestern practical nonsense." The room went silent. Riley stared at her best friend like she was talking to a stranger. "Delaney, do you hear yourself right now?" "What?" Delaney snapped. "I'm being honest for once. Noah's a nice guy, but let's be realistic about what this relationship was. I was helping him become someone better than his background would naturally produce. And now he wants to go play Silicon Valley startup bro with a bunch of soulless tech drones." That's when Riley stood up. "I think you should leave," she said quietly. Delaney whirled around. "Excuse me?" "Riley, you know I'm right. You've seen how he dresses, how he talks about money, how he doesn't understand art or culture or anything that actually matters in life. I've seen a good man work his ass off for 3 years while his girlfriend treated his achievements like inconveniences," Riley shot back. "And I'm seeing that same girlfriend reveal exactly who she really is when she doesn't get her way." I'd never heard Riley talk to Delaney like that. Ever. Delaney's face flushed red. She turned back to me with this expression of pure entitlement. "You're really going to let her talk to me that way? After everything I've done for you?" "What exactly have you done for me?" I asked. "I made you better. I gave you taste, refinement, connections to people who matter. Without me, you'd still be that small-town nobody with a business degree eating at Applebee's and thinking that counts as dining out." The silence that followed was deafening. Riley gathered her purse and headed for the door. "Delaney, I'll call you when you've figured out how to apologize for all of this." After Riley left, Delaney tried to walk it back. Said she was emotional, said I was forcing her to say things she didn't mean, said I should understand how stressed she was about losing our future together. But I kept hearing those words. Small-town nobody. Elevating you. Better than his background would naturally produce. "I think you should go," I said. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. "You're really doing this? You're really choosing money over love?" "I'm choosing respect over contempt," I replied. "And apparently that choice was made for me a long time ago." She left without another word. My phone rang an hour later. Delaney's mother. "Noah," Vivian Pierce said, her voice tight with embarrassment. "Riley called me. I need you to know that what Delaney said about your background is unacceptable. Her father and I are appalled." Turns out Riley had given Delaney's parents a full account of the conversation, including the small-town nobody comment and the elevating you attitude. "We didn't raise her to talk about people that way," Vivian continued. "We've always respected your work ethic and your character. Success isn't about where you come from, it's about who you choose to be." The woman who I'd always felt barely tolerated me was apologizing for her daughter's behavior. "I start my new position Monday. Found a great apartment with a view of the mountains. The signing bonus covered everything with money left over. But honestly, the best part of this whole mess was watching someone I'd put on a pedestal reveal exactly who she was underneath all that sophisticated presentation. Turns out the right person doesn't see your background as something that needs fixing." Edit. For those asking why I didn't see this side of her earlier, looking back, the signs were there. I just mistook condescension for sophistication and control for culture. Edit 2. Riley texted me this morning. "I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner. I knew she talked about you differently when you weren't around, but I didn't realize how bad it was until I heard it myself." Final update: I wasn't planning to update this story, but enough has happened that it feels worth sharing the conclusion, especially for anyone dealing with similar career versus relationship pressures. 1 year in Silicon Valley has been transformative in ways I never expected. The promotion led to another promotion 6 months later. I'm now a principal analyst with equity that's actually worth something and responsibility for deals that make the evening news. I bought a house in Los Gatos with that mountain view I mentioned, and I wake up every morning grateful for the choice I made. But the real revelation came through a conversation I had with Grace last month. My sister was out here for a travel nursing assignment at Stanford Hospital, staying with me for a few weeks between contracts. Over dinner one night, she mentioned running into Riley at a medical conference in Chicago. "You should hear what's been happening with Delaney," Grace said carefully. Apparently, the Morrison retrospective Delaney had promised her boss, the one I was supposed to help organize, fell through spectacularly. Without my connections in the finance world, connections I'd built but never thought she was paying attention to, they couldn't secure the major sponsors they needed. The gallery had to cancel the entire event 3 weeks before opening. Riley told Grace that Delaney got written up by her boss for over-promising on resources she couldn't deliver. The gallery's been struggling financially since then, and they had to let go of 2 junior curators last month. But here's the part that really got to Riley, Grace continued. Delaney's been telling everyone that you abandoned her for Silicon Valley money, that you chose materialism over meaningful culture. She's made herself the victim in this whole story. According to Riley, mutual friends stopped buying that narrative around month 3, when it became clear that Delaney had never actually supported my professional goals and had been pretty condescending about my background all along. Riley said she finally understood why you looked so tired all the time when you were together, Grace told me. Like you were constantly trying to prove you deserved to be in the room. That hit me hard, because it was accurate. I had been exhausted by the end of that relationship, not from working hard, but from trying to earn respect that should have been freely given. The best part of this whole year hasn't been the career success, though. It's been dating someone who actually gets excited about my achievements instead of treating them as obstacles to her comfort. I met Elena at a fintech conference in San Francisco 8 months ago. She's a senior analyst at a competing firm, understands the industry, asks smart questions about my projects, and celebrates my wins like they're her wins too. When I told her about getting tapped for the acquisition team that's evaluating a $200 million healthcare startup, her response was, "That's incredible. Tell me everything about the deal structure." Not, "Does this mean you'll be working more hours?" or, "I hope this doesn't go to your head." Just genuine excitement about something that matters to me professionally. We're already talking about coordinating our next career moves. She's been approached by a London firm, and instead of seeing that as a threat to our relationship, we're exploring whether my company has European opportunities that would align with her timeline. That's what partnership actually looks like. Not one person sacrificing for the other's comfort zone, but both people supporting each other's growth even when it requires adaptation. Last week, I got a LinkedIn message from Delaney. Just a brief note saying she hoped I was doing well, and that she'd always remember the good times we shared. No acknowledgement of what went wrong, no insight into how things have been for her since, just a polite closing the book message. I didn't respond. Not because I'm angry, I'm genuinely not, but because there's nothing left to say. We wanted fundamentally different things from that relationship, and neither of us was willing to bend on what mattered most to us. She wanted someone who would prioritize her comfort and social status over his own professional growth. I needed someone who would see my ambitions as assets rather than inconveniences. We were both honest about our priorities in the end. The relationship just couldn't survive that honesty. Victor and I were talking about this over lunch yesterday. He mentioned that a lot of high performers struggle with partners who see success as something that takes away from the relationship rather than something that enhances it. The right person amplifies what you're capable of, he said. The wrong person asks you to diminish it. I spent 3 years trying to balance those two approaches, and it nearly cost me the opportunity that's changed my entire trajectory. Sometimes the hardest decision is also the only decision. Sometimes choosing yourself over someone else's comfort zone is the most loving thing you can do for both of you. Delaney deserves to be with someone who values stability and familiar social circles over professional growth. I deserve to be with someone who sees my career goals as exciting rather than threatening. We just weren't right for each other, and that's okay. The timing of that ultimatum was perfect. It forced us both to be honest about what we actually wanted. I'm grateful for the clarity, even though the process was painful, and I'm grateful for the life I've built since making that choice. Elena and I are looking at houses in both Palo Alto and London this weekend. Whatever we choose, we'll choose it together, as partners who want to see each other succeed. That's what I was missing before, and it makes all the difference. Edit. For those asking about career advice, trust your instincts about opportunities, even when people you love don't understand them. The right person will find ways to support your growth. The wrong person will ask you to limit it. Edit 2. Someone asked if I'd make the same choice again knowing how it would affect Delaney's career. Honestly? Yes. I'm not responsible for managing other people's assumptions or protecting them from the consequences of their choices. She made her position clear, and I responded accordingly. Edit 3. Grace mentioned that Riley's been promoted to chief curator at a museum in Denver. Apparently getting out of Delaney's orbit was good for her career too, Sometimes standing up for what's right benefits everyone involved.